All right, we're back in the wheat plots with talking about a couple different things, some leaf disease, some fusarium, but also we happened to stumble across some white heads. So what do we look for with white heads in wheat?
So white heads can actually be caused by a number of different things. So we can get wheat stem maggot, so you'd check that, but it's pretty intact, so I'd roll that one out.
So just the head would
pull out a little bit easier. So other things that can cause white heads are stress. So if the plant is experiencing moisture stress, so dry conditions, and we have definitely seen that this year in a lot of areas, and as well as root rots. And so I pulled this plant out. It was a guard row, so I was allowed to. And we can see here that there is some discoloring here at the crown, and I can't wash the roots, so it's hard to say, but they look a little discolored to me. So there's probably a combination of factors going here. So a little bit of root rot, and again, we can't really tell which organism is just by looking at the roots. But then it maybe is experiencing a little bit of stress as well. So this one has had a little bit of physical stress to it, so it's had a little bit of challenge when it was growing as well. We can see by the stem. So when you are seeing white heads, it is important to go out and take a look. Are you seeing, is it an insect? Is it environmental conditions? And kind of get an idea of if it's a root rot, it might just help you think about why. Is it environmental, the pathogen was there? Go back, look at your seed lot. Could it have been that you had seedling diseases or seed-borne diseases on there as well? It just will help you with your rotations in the future and give you a peace of mind. We can find out that it wasn't an insect, or maybe it wasn't a disease and it was just environmental, something we can't control.
Okay, and so also searching high and low here for leaf disease. And I'm not sure if anyone else has had this go on this year, but we can't find it. So it's a good thing, but it's really hard to demonstrate how to scout.
Exactly. But like, we can talk about how to scout for leaf diseases.
Yes.
So scouting for leaf diseases, you should be scouting your cereal crops right through the growing season, every 5 to 10 days, more frequently after rainfalls, just like anything else. With leaf diseases, it's common sometimes that we would see leaf lesions on the lower leaves, which we're not really seeing here. We're just seeing more natural die-off. But the thing is, so if in a year like this, if it was wetter in the spring, you may see some leaf lesions from tan spot, septoria, or spot blotch on the lower leaves. It's a polycyclic disease, which means every lesion is going to create new spores. And those spores can then move up the canopy and cause new lesions. And that's what we're watching for. So once we start to see it, it's good not to panic. Watch the environment and watch that progression. So it is, leaf diseases, the way they affect yield is affecting that photosynthetic tissue. And so really when we're thinking about protecting the yield of our crop, we're looking at the flag leaf, the first leaf here, the highest leaf, as well as the second highest leaf known as the penultimate leaf. So we're looking at, if we're applying a fungicide, if we are seeing pressure, which we're not in this field, then we would be looking at protecting those leaves. So we'd be wanting to monitor the progression of those leaf symptoms and watching how they progress through the canopy. If we see initial lesions and then the environment becomes very dry, it is likely that that disease is not going to progress, and it can actually halt or stop all disease development in that crop.
Okay, and so you had mentioned polycyclic diseases.
Yeah.
So can you explain what that actually is and give us some more examples of what we might be watching for with disease and polycyclic?
Exactly. So we have two different types, polycyclic and monocyclic. So polycyclic, basically what it means is more than one disease cycle. So it causes that initial infection, and then we get more spores, so we get more infections from that initial lesion. So when we're managing polycyclic diseases, these are the diseases that we want to be in the field for and actually monitoring and looking for the disease progression. When the environment is favorable, they can actually spread quite quickly. So leaf diseases are one. Other diseases include anthracnose in lentils, ascochyta blight, mycosphaerella blight in peas. So a lot of the diseases that we're actually visibly scouting for symptoms before we make a fungicide application, those are going to be polycyclic. On the other side, we have monocyclic diseases. There aren't very many of these. So the big ones that we deal with are fusarium head blight and sclerotinia stem rot. So these are sometimes the ones that give people the most headache because they're a little bit more challenging. So when we're scouting for monocyclic, we're not going to see symptoms. We have to apply all of our management practices before we see symptoms. So we're going to be scouting for environmental conditions. So we want to be thinking about the risk. So looking at our field history. So how much disease was there last time we grew a susceptible crop? So how much pressure is there? But then looking at the environment. So what is the environment doing? Is it creating getting favorable conditions for disease development or not. And that's going to help us make that spray decision. And it's something we want to be thinking about every single year instead of doing a routine application.
Right, and I like that. You scout for the conditions, not the disease itself.
Exactly, yeah.
So in terms of fusarium, since we are standing
Yeah.
right here, for a lot of these plots, it's too late to apply a fungicide. But can you show us why it's too late? Like,
Yeah.
what are we looking for when we're trying to make that decision and stage the crop properly?
Exactly, yeah. So with fungicide for fusarium head blight, we have a very narrow window. So we want to be looking at from when we can start application at 75% head emergence. The optimum time is when you start seeing those yellow anthers. So when the crop starts flowering, so you're going to see the yellow anthers starting in the middle of the heads. And then we want to stop spraying at kind of that full flower. And once we start seeing white anthers, then it's too late. And that's kind of what we're seeing here.
You're seeing the white one.
Yeah, so we see some white anthers on this head, but a lot of the heads in here have already gone out of this stage. So when we, oh, go ahead.
So this is just like too late. Like, it's not worth trying to put on a fungicide, right?
Exactly, it's too late. It's outside of the label or spray window in the label. So this one we wouldn't be worried about fusarium head blight fungicide application. It's just not going to be possible at this point.
Okay.
But we can talk a little bit about fusarium head blight scouting.
Yes.
So this is something that I think has been really a challenge this year in a large part of the province. So when we think about fusarium head blight, environment's really what's going to be driving the epidemic, or driving the disease development. The pathogen or the inoculum is likely present in the environment. So fusarium head blight likes high humidity. So it needs a minimum amount of time where the humidity is above 90%.
Okay.
And so that's what the risk maps are showing. So they're looking at a number of different factors over usually a 7-day period before heading. So they're looking at temperature. So is it in that optimum range? For fusarium graminearum, it's fairly high, like 25 to 30 degree range, kind of in that range there. They're also looking at the amount of precipitation, and they're also looking at the amount of hours of high humidity. So that map will give us a guide. But it's also important to actually go down in your field and look at what's happening. So think about your rotation. Think about your yield potential of your crop. But also think about your local weather conditions. Because the map is showing large regional variation. But it is possible everyone's probably driven down one grid road, turned the corner, it's pouring rain, drive 5 minutes further, and it's perfectly dry and sunny. And that happens. So we want to think about what's happening in your field. Are you seeing high humidity? Is it staying throughout the day? Are we having that consistent wetness on the head? That'll give you some indication of where your personal risk is.
Sure. And in terms of susceptibility with different wheat crops, so
Yeah.
durum is more susceptible. So would you recommend that producers take a look at that crop a little bit more than perhaps some spring wheat and some varieties in the spring wheat?
Yeah, so in the spring wheat we do, I think, have one variety that is resistant.
Okay.
We have a few varieties that are moderately resistant. Once we move into durum, the highest resistant is going to be a moderately susceptible star, which means it does a little bit better than moderately susceptible, but not enough to be intermediate. So if you're on the fence and you're going to make fungicide applications in only some of your wheat crops, it would be a good idea to look at your durum more than your spring wheat, especially if you're growing some of those moderately resistant varieties. Your spring wheat is going to be more susceptible. We don't have as strong of a genetic package available right now.
Great. And you had mentioned the risk maps. Where can producers find those? Are they available to everybody?
They are available to everyone. They're available on Saskatchewan Wheat Commission's website. And they are produced by Sask Wheat and WIN, so Weather Innovations Network.
Okay, and with using those risk maps, we also have to be able to go out and stage our crops, right? Because we have to know the heading date.
Exactly.
So we can customize it, I guess, for
Yeah.
our own crops.
Yeah, so exactly. So using the weather map it is really going to be important to know when your crop is going to be staging. So on the Sask Wheat website, they do have some information on how to do risk assessment, but also how to stage your crop. And so when you're looking at that map, you want to first forecast when your crop is going to be heading, and then you'd want to be looking at that risk map for that day. So they do forecast, I think it's 4 days in advance.
Right, but the key is also to make sure that you are looking at your own field and you're out in your field scouting and not just going by what the risk map says.
Exactly, so use it as a guide, but go out and see what's going on in your own field as well.
Excellent. Well, I think that that's everything for the cereal diseases. Do we have a question? No questions yet. We are going to head over to the flax, so stay tuned and we will be right back in a couple minutes.